My name is Alara Duval. I'm 34, the youngest of three in a family that runs on blue blood and sharper teeth. We were raised in penthouses, polished by prep schools and weaponized for Wall Street, but I was the only one who didn't come out craving power like oxygen. While my brother inherited the hedge fund and my sister inherited the family name, I built my worth quietly, coding infrastructure for corporate empires that pretended I didn't exist. That was fine. I preferred shadows to their spotlight. But when my ex-CEO Fiancé sent me an invitation to his wedding, hosted at a venue he didn't know I owned, with a bride who would later humiliate me in front of 500 people, something inside me broke in all the right places. By the time dessert was served, I had turned the happiest night of their lives into the opening scene of a federal investigation. The envelope came gold-embossed and hand-delivered, like it was a royal decree. No name, just to the executive office of Vale Technology Holdings. I held it like it was a dead rat. Madeline, my assistant, hovered by the door. Want me to shred it? I want you to burn it, I said, slipping a manicured finger under the seal. Inside, a wedding invitation. Roman Sable and Blake Severin. Sable Heights Hotel. Black tie. Fireworks. Charity auction. Full weekend itinerary. And the signature line in cursive that curled like a blade. Join us as we begin forever. My hand stilled. Forever started with the man who'd once rewritten my company bylaws overnight and locked me out of the firm I built. And now he was throwing a wedding like a product launch, sponsored hashtags and all. I checked the booking site. The venue wasn't one of his. It was a boutique property under a shell company I'd purchased last year through a quiet LLC. He was getting married in my building. Not by accident. That man didn't breathe without intent. I closed the folder. You're going? Madeline asked. Yes, I said, but not as a guest. 2 days later, I walked into Sable Heights wearing black. Not mourning. Calculating. Glass chandeliers. Golden uplights. The kind of money that doesn't need to introduce itself. Everyone there looked like they'd stepped out of an algorithm for high-value influencers and trust fund CEOs. I moved through the lobby like I belonged, which I did. The building's wiring, HVAC, security systems. All mine. A weapon I hadn't planned to use. Until now. The concierge smiled at me like I was a plus one. She had no idea. Executive check-in is in the orchid room, she offered. I'm not checking in, I said, stepping into the elevator. Cut. Pre-wedding mixer. Sunset. Terrace. Champagne. Blake Severin stood in the center like a solar flare. Gold sequins, diamond collar, skin sharp with contour. The kind of woman who smiles with her teeth but never her eyes. Roman stood beside her, hand on her waist like property. Same Roman. Slick hair. Smug. The man who took everything and acted like I was the one who walked away. Who invited the intern? Blake's voice cut across the terrace. Laughter. Not the kind that fades politely. The kind that stings. I mean, she added, sipping her drink, someone should remind her that crashing the party is still tacky. Even if you used to be engaged to the CEO. I didn't flinch, but something inside me settled. A lock clicking into place. Roman didn't meet my eyes. You think you've already won, I said softly, too quiet for anyone but them to hear. Blake tilted her head. Sweetheart, we already bought the ring. I leaned in, just a breath from her shoulder. Then I suggest you enjoy the rehearsal, because the main event won't end the way you think. Back in the control room, beneath the ballroom, the walls hummed with quiet power. I entered the override code. The system lit up. Every camera, light grid, and access point displayed on monitors. Sable Heights was no longer just a venue. It was a stage, a trap, a message. I opened the admin console and activated Protocol Echo, a dormant program I built in a sleepless week after Roman's betrayal. Audio capture, fail-safe lighting overrides, emergency lockdown toggles. I poured a glass of Pinot from the fridge I installed for nights like this. And I waited. Let the bitch have her day. She won't make it to dessert. The lights on the ballroom grid flickered once. Just enough to be noticed. Not enough to raise alarms. I watched it happen from the control room. My private bunker 2 floors below the orchestra's violins and the influencers' fake laughs. The hum of the servers behind me sounded like breath held too long. People think revenge is loud, messy, screaming into someone's face with red eyes and broken glass. They're wrong. Real revenge is cold, precise. It doesn't shout, it monitors. I flicked through surveillance feeds. Ballroom, kitchen, service hallways, guest elevators. There she was, Blake, on camera 6, laughing with a group of stylists like she hadn't just tried to rip my face off in front of half of Wall Street. People don't fall from power, I murmured. They get pushed, quietly, strategically, like stocks, like dominoes. Cut. A ping on my main screen. Intrusion detected. File access, 21:06 Eastern Standard Time. Severin.Blake at AMC Corp. I sat up straighter. She was in the AMC shared drive. Not public. Not on the wedding itinerary. That account didn't exist unless someone granted her proxy access. She'd broken into a backup archive. My archive. One I buried so deep even the IRS wouldn't know to ask for it. I pulled up the metadata. She copied folders labeled Zurich_ Trust and Echo_ accounts. My throat dried. Those weren't just reports. They were keys. Keys to a network of holding companies, fraudulent IPOs, and one signature. Mine, used to approve all of it. Roman hadn't just stolen a wedding date. He was planning to hang me with it. Cut. A voice came over the comms. Griffin, my oldest friend in the building. L, the groom, just requested champagne for the green room. Wants something French and cruel. Your favorite. Tell him we're out of cruelty, I said, but we've got enough karma for everyone. I logged into the lighting console, dimmed the outer ring, flushed the center stage with warm white. Gentle, spotlight ready. People always confess under the right light. Back upstairs, the energy in the ballroom had shifted. Guests checked their phones, whispered. One hedge fund guy stared at a headline like it had slapped him. AMC board under SEC review after anonymous leak. I moved quietly behind the curtain, waited, watched. Roman paced. Blake was no longer smiling. Another push. Inside the kitchen, chaos. 2 sous chefs walked out mid-plating. Oven temp dropped to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Waiters whispered about corrupted order tickets and a table setting that spontaneously switched to gluten-free for all guests. The staff systems were glitching. No one knew why. I did. Protocol echo was bleeding into the infrastructure. I hadn't meant for that, but the system was waking up faster than expected. Every suppressed script, every security override it wanted to run. Roman's world was beginning to eat itself. 10 minutes later, Blake stormed out of the bridal suite. She bumped into a line cook. Wine splashed on her sleeve. She snapped, loud enough to echo down the hallway. If I see one more of you insects breathing near me, I will have your career turned into caviar paste. The cook flinched. I didn't. Cut to surveillance. Camera 4 showed her throwing her clutch across the dressing room. It cracked against the mirror. A small, silver device slid out. USB. I froze the frame. Zoomed. I'd seen that exact model before. High capacity, encrypted. Used by AMC Legal for contingency scenarios. Why was Blake holding it? A backup plan? Or blackmail? Another ping. An anonymous message. Routed through a burner relay. Confirm files deleted before 10 p.m. She cannot link this to Zurich. My stomach nodded. She was me. Zurich was the offshore shell company Roman used as a laundering gateway for digital securities. If Blake was deleting data, it meant the plan wasn't just about wedding theatrics. It was an erasure, a digital guillotine. They weren't trying to humiliate me. They were trying to disappear me. Cut. I stepped out of the control room, slipping into the hallway like a shadow, down the service tunnel, past the champagne cart, toward the ballroom. My heels echoed once, twice. Then I kicked them off. Barefoot now. Quiet. Surgical. I walked behind the drapery, separating the ballroom from the main hallway. The music swelled. Roman was giving his pre-toast. Guests clapped. He smiled like a man, untouchable. I stood 10 feet behind him, hidden, watching. His hand reached for the mic. I reached for my comm. Activated phase 1. Emergency lights dimmed 15%. Heat sensors spiked in the West Wing. The AV console pinged to standby. One push away from override. And then, the bride found me. Not with a gun. Not with a threat. But with a plate of truffle canapes. And a smile like arsenic. Staff eat in the kitchen, she hissed. She reached forward and took the plate out of my hand. People saw. They laughed. My name was Ash again. She turned back toward the crowd. Didn't see me smile. You threw me out once, Roman. But tonight, I locked the doors. Applause. Roman raised his glass. His voice echoed off marble and crystal. To love, he said, and to a future built without ghosts. Guests laughed. Toasted. Blake sparkled beside him, sipping champagne like it was victory. I stood at the edge of the ballroom, barefoot behind the blackout curtain, clutching the comm unit like a scalpel. Love is just a contract, and contracts can be voided. Phase 2 initiated. Griffin's voice crackled in my earpiece. Kitchen systems failed in real time. Orders scrambled. Servers confused. Wine went to the wrong tables. One guest got sea bass instead of vegan tartlet and nearly threw a fit. The rhythm broke. Momentum shifted. Guests began checking phones, not each other. Distraction. Successful. Now reveal. A ripple ran through the crowd as Blake made her entrance, again, this time for the formal toast. Her dress had changed. Same gold shimmer, but tighter, meaner, like she dressed for war, not vows. She took the mic. I want to thank everyone here, she began, especially the ones who made us stronger by trying to destroy us. That was aimed at me. The screens behind her flickered. Just once. I tapped the override on my comm. Every AV system in the building blinked. Subtle. Enough to catch a few murmurs. Enough to suggest something was wrong. Life teaches you two things, Blake continued. Some people are born with power. Others try to steal it. But tonight proves. The feed glitched again. This time, the screen behind her flashed white for a half second. Then black. I watched Roman shift, uncomfortably. He knew those systems. He knew they shouldn't flicker. Not unless someone was inside the grid. Someone like me. A vibration buzzed in my coat. New email. Encrypted. Sender unknown. Subject. This isn't just a wedding, Alara. I clicked. Inside, a copy of a real estate transfer filed that morning with the county clerk. Property, Sable Heights Hotel. Seller, Orion Holding Group, my shell. Buyer, AMC Corp. Authorized by Alara Duval. My name. My fake signature. A legal transfer of $27 million in equity. They'd just bought the building from me. With forged documents. At my wedding venue. Roman wasn't hosting this wedding to taunt me. He was hosting it to complete a paper trail. So if the SEC came looking, the asset trail would lead to me. My lungs stopped moving. I checked the timestamp. 9:42 p.m. At 10 p.m., the county would archive the digital deed permanently. If I didn't stop it, I'd legally be the seller of stolen real estate, and every offshore transaction tied to this address would lead to me. Not Roman. Not Blake. Me. I broke from the curtain. Pushed through the corridor. Past florals. Past whispers. The ballroom stretched like a stage. Everyone turned. Blake saw me first. Her face curled. She didn't miss a beat. Didn't I tell you to eat in the kitchen? The crowd turned with her, smiling, laughing. One guest even clapped. I kept walking, past the servers, past the photographer, straight toward the head table. Roman moved. Ilara, this isn't. I stepped up, took a flute from the tray, and smashed it against the floor. Glass everywhere. Silence. I picked up the mic. No hesitation. No apology. You all came here for a celebration, I said. But what you're part of is evidence. A beat. The bride and groom aren't just liars. They're thieves. And tonight, they used this wedding to commit federal fraud. Gasps. One camera flash. A woman in the back fainted. I turned to the AV booth. Play it. The feed switched. Recording played. Roman's voice. Blake's voice. Talking about wire routes. Zurich. Hidden trusts. And one sentence that landed like a gunshot. She'll never know. By the time she finds out the hotel's ours, Ilara's name will be the rope we hang her with. A man dropped his wine glass. Roman lunged for the booth. Security scrambled. But the crowd? They didn't move. They watched. Roman screamed, she's lying. That audio is doctored. I raised the mic again. Then sue me. But first, evacuate. I reached into my pocket, held up the emergency override badge. It's my building, I said. And I just canceled your reception. The lights dropped to red. Fire doors locked. Alarm sounded. And I turned, walking off the stage like it was my final bow. You just served your last course. Because this wedding is over. The music died first. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just a soft unraveling. Strings losing tension. A note bending wrong. Then silence. The kind that makes people look up before they understand why. I was already moving. Down the service stairs. 2 at a time. The smell of hot metal and ozone thick in the air. Servers stood frozen in hallways, trays trembling, eyes darting like prey sensing a shift in the ecosystem. When systems fail, truth rushes in to fill the vacuum. I tapped my comm AV. Now. The ballroom screens lit up. Gasps rippled. Phones rose. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was part of the show. Then the audio hit. Roman's voice. Clean. Confident. Recorded weeks ago. Zurich routes the funds through her name. By the time regulators trace it, she's the signature. Not us. Blake's laugh followed. Bright. Sharp. She won't even see it coming. Weddings make people sentimental. Sloppy. The room shattered. People stood. Chairs scraped. A woman screamed. Cameras flashed like lightning in a storm. Roman lunged for the stage. Security intercepted him. Late, confused, overwhelmed. I stepped into the open. No disguise now. No shadows. Just me. Pause, I said. The audio stopped on command. I let the silence breathe. Let it stretch until it hurt. There's a lie people love, I said into the mic, that money hides crimes. It doesn't. It records them. Murmurs. Panic. Someone shouted for the exits. They didn't open. Fire code compliant, magnetically delayed. Enough to keep order. Enough to keep witnesses. I caught sight of Griffin near the bar, pale but steady, nodding once. He'd followed instructions. Logged every override. Time-stamped. Legal. You don't burn a house down unless you plan to survive the fire. Cut. Sirens. Not inside. Outside. A new kind of tension crawled up my spine. 2 men in dark suits entered through the side corridor. Federal posture. Controlled steps. One hand already near a badge. Agent Lior Vega. He didn't look at Roman. He looked at me. Ilara Duval, he said. You're under arrest for market manipulation, wire fraud, and conspiracy to destabilize publicly traded assets. The room exploded again. Roman laughed. High-pitched. Relieved. There it is, he said. She finally shows her hand. I didn't resist. I smiled. You ever notice, I said calmly, how the people who scream innocence the loudest are usually practicing their alibi? Vega hesitated. Just a flicker. I leaned closer, lowered my voice. You're arresting the wrong person. He raised an eyebrow. We'll sort that out downtown. Before you do, I said, you might want to check Zurich. Blake stiffened. Roman's smile cracked. I reached into my coat and pulled out a burner phone. Black. Cheap. Unremarkable. I pressed one button. Across the ballroom screens, a progress bar appeared. Uploading files. What did you do? Roman shouted. I didn't answer him. I addressed the room. There's a moment, I said, when you realize control is an illusion. Power isn't about owning the system. It's about knowing when to let it speak. The bar hit 100%. Emails, contracts, audio, metadata, shell corporations, time-stamped transfers filed with county clerks and federal registries, all legally obtained, all mirrored to multiple outlets, newsrooms, regulators, compliance desks. Mandatory reporting laws don't care about weddings. Vega's phone buzzed, then his partner's, then every phone in the room. He looked at the screen. Color drained from his face. You should have told me, he said quietly. I met his eyes. You should have asked better questions. Cut. Chaos surged. Roman bolted. Toward the back corridor. Toward the elevators. I moved too. He was fast. Desperate men always are. We collided near the kitchen entrance. Steam blasted. Alarms wailed. Someone dropped a pan. You think this makes you righteous? He snarled, grabbing my arm. You're burning everything. I yanked free. No, I'm disinfecting. He reached inside his jacket. Blake screamed. A gun hit the floor instead. Blake stood there, shaking, hands raised, eyes wild. I didn't sign up for prison, she said. I signed up for power. Sirens breached the building. FBI, local PD, everyone late to a party already over. Roman stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You told me this was airtight, he whispered. She looked past him, at me, and for the first time that night, she smiled, not cruel, not mocking, respectful. She was never the pawn, Blake said softly. She was the architect. Metal cuffs locked around Roman's wrists. One click, then another. FBI agents swarmed. Voices sharp over comms, herding guests like cattle through emergency exits. Sirens outside grew louder. PD units, compliance vans, press trucks already jockeying for sidewalk real estate. Roman didn't speak. He looked at me. Not with rage. Not panic. With calculation. He knew something I didn't. And that was the worst kind of silence. I walked past Blake. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Her lipstick had smudged, half a crimson print across her cheek. A stain of war paint. I never hated you, she said suddenly, voice low. I just couldn't afford to respect you. That line lodged somewhere beneath my ribs. There's always someone justifying the knife because they didn't twist it first. I exited through the service ramp. A black SUV idled at the curb. Griffin was inside. I slid in beside him. He drove. Fast. Silent. Outside, blue and red lights carved the night. Inside, my mind was a hive. Tell me you backed up the Zurich files, I said. I did, he replied. Twice. But there's something else. He handed me his phone. I skimmed it. Froze. It was a video. Roman. Alone. At a bar. Filmed last week. Talking to someone off camera. The voice replying? Familiar. Too familiar. Nolan. My older brother. The one who hadn't returned my calls in months. The one who stepped back from the family fund when I took over the West Coast holdings. Roman leaned toward him on the screen. You're sure she won't see it coming? Nolan's voice calm. She thinks she's the player, but she was always just the perfect scapegoat. My stomach dropped. The screen blurred. Blood surged in my ears. I don't remember the rest of the ride. Just static. Then cold air. Then the dull ache behind my eyes as Griffin unlocked the door to my apartment. He paused in the doorway. Lights on. I hadn't left them on. A wine glass sat on the counter. Full. Someone was already here. Don't panic, Griffin whispered. Could be nothing. He was wrong. Because nothing never smelled like sandalwood cologne and legal threats. We entered slowly. And there he was. Nolan. Wearing my father's cufflinks. Smiling like he owned the oxygen. I would have picked something stronger than Riesling, he said. Then again, you always did like soft finishes. I didn't speak. Didn't blink. I just stared. Until he laughed. What? No warm welcome for your favorite sibling. I dropped my bag. You helped forge the AMC transfer. Sure did. He sipped. You think Roman knew how to navigate offshore wire trails without help? You made me the fall girl. He tilted his head. Technically, I made you the heroine. Because guess what? Now you get to survive. Griffin stepped forward, voice tight. You played both sides of the board. Nolan shrugged. Of course. That's how you win. I stepped into the kitchen. He didn't follow. I opened a drawer. Felt for the file. Thin. Labeled. Inside a single USB. The real Zurich recordings. Not just Roman and Blake. But Nolan too. Wire transfers. Directives. Full instructions to AMC's legal team. All under his name. I held it up. This is leverage, I said. He didn't flinch. He raised his glass. And that, he nodded at the drive, is insurance. I stared at him. What? He grinned. I already sent that file to the feds. Griffin frowned. Then why? Nolan's grin sharpened. I sent a different version. He leaned in. One where you were in on everything. My knees buckled. You can't fake audit logs. But I can flood their inbox with enough gray to stall for weeks. By the time they sort truth from fiction, the headlines will bury you. Griffin moved fast. Nolan didn't flinch. He placed his wine glass down. You want to hit me? Be my guest. Just remember, some wars are won with whispers, not fists. Then he turned to me. And you, little sister, are already losing the room. In chess, the scariest move isn't checkmate. It's when the queen vanishes, and you don't know if she switched sides. They say silence is louder than screams. The ballroom was proof. No more violin hum. No more champagne, flutes clinking. Just the heavy hush of a room that had seen too much. Agents packed up evidence. Blake was gone, escorted out in cuffs, head down, veil trailing like a crime scene ribbon. Roman sat alone. No press, no crowd, just a table, a chair, and the weight of truth finally caught up. Outside, the December wind bit through my coat. Griffin stood beside me, tie loosened, jaw clenched. Justice, he said. It never feels clean. Because it isn't, I replied. It's messy, personal, and always too late. The feds hadn't believed Nolan's fake file. Thanks to a well-timed call from Griffin to an SEC contact who owed me a favor from a whistleblower case last year, we had gotten in front of the mess. But it had been close. Too close. Nolan fled before the warrants dropped. Interpol picked him up in Lisbon 48 hours later. Roman's assets were frozen. Blake flipped. A plea deal. Testimony in exchange for reduced charges. It didn't absolve her, but it dismantled the machine Nolan had built. The board of AMC met behind closed doors. I wasn't invited. Didn't need to be. The hotel was still mine. So was the surveillance system. I watched from the server room. Roman tried to reclaim his seat. He failed. Votes were cast. New leadership elected. Someone younger. Unattached. Someone not tangled in scandal or bloodlines. Change never comes gently, but sometimes it comes fast. Back at my apartment, I stood at the window. The skyline blinked back. Each light a life. A secret. A lie. Griffin poured 2 glasses of bourbon. I kept one more file, he said. He handed me a second USB. This one's for you. Personal. I figured you'd want the truth from Nolan in his own words. I took it. Didn't plug it in. Not yet. There's a kind of strength in restraint. The power to not look. To not need the last word. I had spent so long trying to prove I was more than the family's pawn. Turns out I was never just a pawn. I was the board. Later that week, I walked into the ballroom again. It smelled of bleach and fresh linens. No trace of wedding flowers or broken glass. I stood where Blake had sneered at me, where Roman had run after me, where everything came undone and came clear. A young woman stepped out from behind a pillar. The new AMC CEO, Elaine Barrett. She was 32. Sharp eyes. No wedding ring. I wanted to thank you, she said. You didn't just save this company. You exposed its rot. I nodded. Sometimes you have to tear the roof off, I said, to see the mold underneath. She smiled. Still, most people don't. I wasn't most people. Outside, the press still buzzed, but their cameras didn't matter anymore. I had stopped playing to their lens. Nights later, I burned Nolan's file, watched the drive melt in the kitchen sink, the flame blue and sharp like memory. Griffin watched me. You sure? Yeah. Even if it had proof, he hurt you worse. I met his eyes. Revenge is an endless room, but peace has a door, and I'm choosing to walk through it. Sometimes the smallest key unlocks the biggest vault. Sometimes justice looks like firelight, and sometimes the only way out is to rewrite your name into something they can never erase.